In the previous video, we set up our weapon switching to be pretty smooth and good with the transitions and stuff like that. But it was only working on the client, and even more specifically, it's only actually going to work on the server currently. Now, the reason for that is we are spawning all the weapons on the server, and when we go to spawn them, we add them to the array. So that array is not replicated. It's only known on the server. So the weapon array on the server is getting filled, but the client version is not. The client version really has no idea what it actually is. So what we're going to do here is we need to replicate our weapon array, as well as we need to do a couple other small things that I will kind of show you as we go. So first things first, we want to go ahead and set up our replication and get it going so we can actually switch weapons. So for starters, here we have our get lifetime replicated props. We're going to go ahead and copy our current weapon replication and create a new one, call it previous weapon. I'll explain why here in a bit. So we're going to go to our header, find our replication for our current weapon, copy that, paste it, and change it to previous weapon. And we want to change it to just being replicated. We do not need an onRep event for it. So we're going to make our weapon array also replicated. So now go to our .cpp, and our weapon array and all that is now being replicated. Now we need to set our current weapon. So what we're going to do is we're going to do previous weapon equals current weapon. Now the reason I'm doing this and creating a previous weapon is because I want to have, so when the onRep runs, we're going to be switching weapons inside of here. The current weapon is the very new weapon. The other clients don't know what the previous weapon was. They don't have any real reference, or they don't have a pointer to it, so they can't hide it, so to speak. So that's why we have the previous weapon. So the previous weapon is going to allow us to hide the previous weapon. So that way, only the weapon that is supposed to be in the hand, the current weapon, is going to stay and show as visible. So now we need to create a server RPC. So I'm just going to do this right underneath previous weapon. I can do u function server reliable and with validation, and let's give it a name. Void server underscore switch weapon. It's going to take in a pointer, so class a weapon base to our new weapon. So new weapon. Now let's go ahead and create our validate. So we're going to do a bool for the validate and a void for our implementation. So the bool is going to be underscore validate, and the other void is going to be underscore implementation. Now we can go ahead and create the implementation for both. Just the validate and implementation. And I'm going to move these above the onRep right here. And for the validate, I'm going to make it return true, just by default. Again, we're going to have to end up doing some checks on certain ones later. This is probably going to end up being one of those. I just got to make sure I remember to actually do it. So starting from, let's say the client switches the weapon. So if current weapon, we're going to go ahead and change it out. And when we do, we have our next weapon. So current weapon is now being set to the next weapon. So what we're going to want to do is take this current weapon and send it to the server saying we want to switch it. So we already hide it and all that. So at the very end here, what we're going to do is, actually I'm going to do it, we'll do it here. Doesn't really matter. We'll do server underscore switch weapon, and we're going to pass in current weapon. Yeah, let's actually move this inside of the if statement. And we're going to do the exact same thing down here in the switch previous weapon, like so. So now we call server underscore switch weapon. So from here, we want to go ahead and set current weapon on the server. So current weapon equals new weapon. Now remember, they have access to the previous weapon, so we need to make sure we alter that as well here in a bit. So what we're going to do is if previous weapon, we want to hide it. So previous weapon, get weapon mesh, set hidden in game, true. So we're going to go ahead and hide the previous weapon. And then if the current weapon's here, what we're going to do is we're going to show it. So we want to take current, actually I'm just going to flat out copy it. So current weapon, set hidden in game, false. Then we're going to set previous weapon to equal current weapon, just like so. Now in the server switch, we need to call our onRep. That's just so the server actually runs it. And we should be pretty much good to go, minus an issue that I will show you here in a bit. So let's go ahead and let that finish compiling. Awkward silence. And we're going to load up the project. Alrighty, let's just wait for the good old 10-second hang time. There we are. We have 2 clients. And here we go. So, as you can see, this client here that I'm moving has the M1 carbine and the 1911 inside of each other. So they're spawned there. Same thing for the his view of the server. You can see the other guns. So now, for example, on the server, I can switch between them just fine, and it shows what's in hand properly. Same thing with the client. Oh, I forgot to replicate the weapon array, didn't I? The other reason for that is because I didn't replicate the weapon array. Whoa. Hopefully whatever I pressed didn't actually change anything. So now that the weapon array is replicated, we should actually be able to see the server change weapons from the client, and the client should also be able to change the weapons as well. And then we're going to have to make sure we do a check. So if we have one weapon and we try to change, nothing will happen. So that'll help prevent those little crashes. Alrighty. So let's try to change weapons. As you can see, we changed through them just fine. Now that we switched through, all those weapons that are in our hands disappeared just like this. Except those are still being seen. So they're not actually hidden really by default. So what we're going to want to do is make them actually hidden from the beginning. So weapon base.cpp and begin play. What we're going to do is weapon mesh set hidden in game true. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a public function do void weapon is now in hand. So I'm just going to pass in a boolean in hand. And what we can go ahead and actually do is control it from here. So weapon mesh set hidden in game in hand. So we're going to do the opposite of in hand. So if it's in the hand, we're going to unhide it. If it's not in the hand, we're going to hide it. So now in character base.cpp, what we're going to do is get our current weapon. The current weapon. Weapon is now in hand. True. So let's go and start altering this. So we can get rid of the hiding by default. We're going to go starting from the client. So switch next weapon. So current weapon. Weapon is now in hand. False. And true. So false and true. So I want to go ahead and just copy that and revert it down into our previous weapon as well. And it froze. There we go. So now we have this set up and nicely cleaned up. What we're going to do is, let's see, no, wrong function. And I can't scroll because it's frozen. All right, so in our on rep, what we're going to do is previous weapon, we want to hide it. And set weapon is now in hand to false because we want to hide it. Then we want to take our current weapon. Weapon is now in hand. Yes, we want to unhide it. So let's go ahead and compile. And this should hopefully hide and unhide the weapons by default and keep them kind of synced up. Make sure I am hiding them from the start, which I believe I am. Yes. That was a lot of scrolling. All right, wait for this to finish. And let's see. So now we only have one weapon in hand. Switch. Everything is switching accordingly. Let's check out the server. So the server is not properly hiding it. So that's going to be a problem. So we can try to figure out why here in a bit. See how long has this been going on? 12 minutes. Let's try to look at it. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and try to look at this function. Close down the engine. Make sure it has nothing to do with authority. Okay, well, just a quick judgment. It doesn't seem like it would be. It's already set to replicate. So I'm going to print out a log. So hiding previous weapon. Alrighty, let's just confirm that it actually is hiding because we should be seeing it printed twice, but I have a hunch we're only going to actually be seeing it printed once because my assumption is the on rep is running too fast for the clients. So previous weapon is being set to the current weapon before really before it can actually be really seen, so to speak. So we're probably gonna have to transition this to the client. That way previous weapon is not replicated. Switch, hiding previous weapon, hiding previous weapon. All right, so I'm going to give that a try. So we're going to no longer replicate previous weapon. And what we're going to do is we're going to set it here like before. So this is going to fail. So we have our current weapon, then we set the previous weapon. And we should hopefully have this being kind of linked strictly on the client, because current weapon is going to be, previous weapon is going to be false here from the start because it's not replicated. Clients aren't going to know what it is. And then when we come down here, current weapon is going to be valid. So we are setting previous weapon to equal the current weapon. So that way it should be kind of set up and good to go to really continue. So the main thing that matters is the weapon array and current weapon. This one I'm kind of winging it. I didn't really think too much on how I would actually go about replicating this. I've never exactly done, actually I haven't done like 90% of the stuff that I'm doing for this series before. So you're kind of seeing me learn as I go as well. Alrighty, see what happens. I have a feeling it's still gonna fail. That's my luck. Right, make sure we can switch. We're good there. Oh, hey, it actually worked. So we are now synced up and good to go there. I'm gonna try 3 clients. Please don't lag out. All right, so client 2, client 3, and server. I guess let's just look at the server. So this client's not seeing the actual weapons. Let's see what happens when we switch. He sees the weapons now. So that is a bug we're going to have to fix. So we will figure that out later on, or just see what the odds are that that was just a one-off. It does not seem to be a one-off, so I will end up having to go through and fixing that later. But regardless, we now have the basics for our weapon switching system in place and good to go. And it should already pretty much be set up to work in third person once we remove this little true here. We're only doing that just so everything's linked up to our first person mesh, because that's what I have all the animations, finished for. So now that that's out of the way, we'll see you in the next one, which I have no idea what we're going to be doing yet. But as always, my Patreon's in the description if you feel like supporting me, and as well as if you have any questions, a link to my Discord server is also there. So I'll see you in the next one.